every single social account I've got is that picture, and that's at least 10 years old now.
Yeah, you gotta update it. I'd say like minimum once every 2 years. So I think it's a good time.
I think it's a good time, and it's a good enough picture now. I'm not going to get a better one. So I might do a swap out early next week, write about it, and say, look, this is like changing my name. It's like emotionally really difficult.
Well, congratulations, firstly.
Yeah, I want congratulations for the bravery, the courage of doing it. All right, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday. It's episode 252. We're talking about changing your LinkedIn profile picture, folks. Like, when's the last time you changed your LinkedIn profile picture? And the reason why Christine and I are talking about it is because as LinkedIn themselves have actually taken a picture of me, which I thought, you know what, that is actually a reasonable picture that could do a swap out. And then I've realized that the picture I've got now, which you see everywhere, you see on Crowdcast now, that's exactly 10 years old. So, you know, it's getting to the point where it's clearly old picture. I'm obviously now heading towards catfish territory, gonna do the swap. All the answers say I should, but at the same time, I feel like emotionally attached to that gray image. I feel like it's difficult. So when's the last time you changed your image, folks? Let me know on the chat. Okay, we've got a few people here. Great to see everyone. Just do some sound checks as usual. I can see people can hear me on Crowdcast, which is great. Probably LinkedIn is not working, by the way. And the reason why I suspect that is because Restream can't handle time zone changes. And so we obviously clocks went forward, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Restream thing is still set to 3 p.m, so it's not come on. So yeah, I don't think we're live. That's it. I think it's just us here. And maybe we're on Facebook, maybe we're on Twitter as well. So no good on LinkedIn. Okay, that's it. Nothing we can do about that. Time zones, another thing that really technology cannot solve.
Mad, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it happens every year, and you know, multiple. Like the US happened like a month ago, right? So we're actually a month later than the US, apparently.
I think calendar people basically forget to do it. So if you're designing a calendar, no one designs a calendar app, it's like a feature of another app. So they don't put time into thinking time zone changes. And when time zone changes happen, we catch it in the wrong time. It just doesn't go live. So that's basically what happened here. It's going to happen next week as well. So I have to recreate that event, unfortunately. All right. That's all good. So we have Christine with us today. Good to see you, Christine. I think everyone knows you already, but you might as well introduce yourself. Who are you? What is you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Christine. So I'm head of talent and people at Quantum Motion. So we are now a scale up. We're quantum computing scale up, trying to solve all the difficult problems in hardware and quantum hiring. So yeah, come and have a chat to me if you're interested in this space.
Proper business, full of eggheads. I mean, are Quantum Motion the most intelligent company that you've ever worked in? It probably is.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like we're just going through annual reviews right now, and you would have thought it's a really simple process. It really isn't. I think people just have like 20 or 100 different iterations on how to run one particular process here. So yeah, it's a lot of different ways of thinking that you need to try to take on board.
Yeah, and you're going to get some like proper genius level people there. Like we're talking 150 plus IQ people.
And stuff. Well, I'm hoping that, you know, they say on average, if you're the average of 5 people you hang out with. So I'm hoping if I'm in the office every day, I'll somehow be an average.
by osmosis, can I get a little bit more intelligent? Yeah. I tell you, I actually don't like to be the dumbest person in the room. I know that's like one of those management cliches where you say, look, if you're not the dumbest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I'm thinking, actually, I don't feel that. I'd rather be kind of just slightly above average so I can talk.
I think you are, though. I think you are, luckily, with your knowledge.
There are times where I've encountered people where I thought, wow, I'm just like way below this person. Like they're just so there's some incredible intellects out there. Okay, anyway, let's get on with this. Why don't we thank our sponsors? Because we always have to do this every week. Every week, Recruiting Brainfood is sponsored. It's no fail on that. Companies basically stepping up and saying, please, we need this conversation to keep going. And today's sponsor is one of my favorite companies. In fact, it's now become one of everyone's favorite companies because I'm seeing people rave about this company unsolicited to say, you know what, this is a game-changing product. What is the company, folks? I don't need to tell you. It's MetaView, of course. Started off as doing pure like interview, note-taking and all the rest of it, now expanding into all kinds of talent intelligence. Really super interesting, and some big news yesterday, so last week as well, which I think Sal's going to want to talk to us about. So let's see whether we have Sal still. Is he here? I hope he is. I saw him before. Or maybe he's just dropped off. That's possible.
He's here. He just saw a message here.
Did he message in?
Well, yeah. He's
here he is. That's cool. Let me just bring Sil on, and he can say hello to the crew. Cool. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm really pleased this category's kind of taken hold. And you know what? It's very interesting. I never used it myself, but I'm starting to use interview tracking. Sil, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm very good, thanks. I'm very good. How are you guys?
We're very well, and I'm pleased to see there's at least some concession to the branding, mate. I thought, where's the hoodie? And actually, is that actually
the merch hat?
No, this is not. I'm not merch up on there. No, it's just the cap.
The cap is there. Sal, wonderful to see you. And obviously, I mean, I meant what I was saying. Loads of people raving about products. So congratulations to you and the team on the impact you've had. Why don't you quickly intro, for the people who don't know who you are and what MetaView does, give the audience a bit of a chat on that, and then tell us what the latest and greatest is.
Yeah, nice. And I'm just going to turn the tables a little bit and do a bit of a very short ode to the Brainfood community, actually, because I know the news that Hung was talking about is we closed some funds recently. So we raised our Series A and are really excited about what that means for obviously us and our team, but also our customers and the product and whatnot. So very excited by that. Headline, just in case folks aren't unaware, MetaView is an AI note taker, but built specifically for the recruiting workflow. And much as we sort of talk about MetaView as a note taker, and that's a really important part of what it is, really what you're seeing more and more is note-taking isn't just note-taking. Note-taking is actually data capture from these recruiting conversations. And so when you actually build an AI that's really good at that task, you then have loads of other use cases that you can use that data for. And so the things that Hung's mentioning, you should obviously check. I won't sort of do the whole spiel now. You should head over to our website and check out some of the features, or even jump on a free trial. But there just ends up being a ton of really cool things you can do when you know everything every candidate has ever told you. Like, it really helps you with your sourcing, because you can find, people, anyone you spoke to in the last 12 months who mentioned they might be willing to relocate and is proficient with, a particular sales motion or a particular technology stack. So there's like these really cool things you can do. But the great thing is also you just don't have to take notes in interviews. So that is still the thing that people get really excited about, is because the notes are so good, you don't have to take notes. I want to just, I'm going to be super quick, but as I said, I want to sort of like turn the tables and almost actually give Brainfood its props. So can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not terrified. Like, what's going on here?
Nice. So it was over a year ago now, but Hung was obviously incredibly quick to jump on the or to react, correctly to the potential impact that AI was going to have on recruiting. And he obviously ran a couple of Brainfood specials and was kind enough to invite us on to demo. And then we also sort of collaborated on some AI and recruitment webinars. And I just want to sort of show you like how early to the game, I guess, Hung was, but more importantly, the Brainfood community was about thinking about these things. It was obviously a really significant turning point for us and our product as well. But you can see basically this period here is where that Brainfood live demo happened, which, it was like a throwaway thing probably for Hung, but actually really important to us because we got so many sort of early customers, early adopters of the product at that point. And then you just see things have really skyrocketed since then. So I thought it was worth sharing, one, again, as a bit of a, ode to Hung and the Brainfood community, but also I think to give a bit of intel into how quick this adoption of AI in recruitment is occurring. We're still probably in the early adopter phase, but it's moving incredibly rapidly. And MetaView was around a good few years actually before this revolution, and you can see how much of our business now is just completely, I guess, revolutionized by this sort of foundational revolution. So yeah, thought that might be some cool context, well, for you to know Hung, but also for the folks at home.
Mate, send me that slide. I will print it out and frame it and stick it on the wall and say, yeah, no, listen, I literally, one of these people, I just looked at it and it grokked for me. I just epiphany. I thought, this is obvious. And I think it was clear that, this category would move forward. And I look forward to seeing more recruiters get the benefit of it. It does actually inherently change the way in which you interview. And I noticed this myself because I stopped talking as much when I realized that I actually wanted the transcription to be mainly the other person. So even that helps you interview better. So yeah, fantastic product. MetaView.com. Do check it out. The free trial is still going, folks. So there's
MetaView.ai. Unfortunately, our slightly better resourced friends over at Meta have MetaView.com. So MetaView.ai.
Is MetaView.com actually Meta?
Yeah, they bought. We were thinking of trying to buy it, and then they bought it about a year ago.
Wow.
What purpose do they have with MetaView.com? What are they going to do with it?
I guess we'll wait and see. But
I would love to know how much they paid for that.
Yeah.
That would be probably a crazy number, right? Anyway, Sal, wonderful to see you. MetaView.ai, free trial. Get it, give it a go, folks. Simple as that.
Nice. Thanks so much, guys. See ya.
Yeah, take care. See you.
That's great. Okay, cool. Let's get on with the show, folks. We are talking about, we've got to review the newsletter real quick. Christine, give us like a few things about Brainfood last week.
Well, I like the DCIT. Actually, probably really relevant with MetaView being on, but DCIT, so the Department of Science and Information and Technology, for those not in the UK, came up with a responsible AI and recruitment white paper type scenario. And obviously, as a government body, I thought it was really interesting. They wrote one focused on recruitment. And I also especially liked how they consulted like the Ada Lovelace Institute and like a charity which funds campaigns for autism research. So it goes to show they were really, speaking to various groups. Yeah, I really like the considerations they put up for things like when you're looking at screening tools and when you're looking at interviewing tools. So the way they divided it was like purpose, functionality, governance, and applicant accessibility requirements. So really it's things we already know. Like for those of you that are looking at tools and how to implement on a day-to-day, it's really just asking the right questions. Like, how is the system going to address this problem? What are the outcomes we're trying to solve? So I really like that they had this kind of checklist to support and empower teams who are maybe just starting their journey or even midway through the journey. And there's a lot of focus on like procurement of tools. So yeah, it's a very kind of straightforward way. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting for DCIT to come up with something like that because I didn't think they would.
Really good, and supported as well by people like CIPD, REC, APSO. So all of the recruiter community generally at that level had got together and produced this. And kudos to everyone who's involved in producing this document. It's UK kind of organizations, but I do think it is portable into different places. And it just gives you a framework to analyze and assess technology that you want to implement, and just put it, put that technology through this framework, and it'll just make you feel a little bit more confident as to whether it's kind of aligned with your values or not. So check it out. I've just shared it in the chat stream there. It is a downloadable on my Dropbox. Cool. Give us a couple more, Christine.
Yeah, the Qualtrics EX one. You know what? It's actually really similar. I realized both of these were really, the last time I was here in February, it was like it's really similar HBR article that highlighted something really, really similar. So it goes to show like all the trends are saying exactly the same thing. But the Qualtrics ES trends are essentially saying, yeah, employees are expecting balance, as we already know, makes sense post-COVID world. But on the AI side of things, again, similar to the Accenture Work and Workforce report last I spoke about when I was here in Feb, employees would rather AI assist them than manage them. And employees are actually open to types of AI where they can assist, well, whether they can control and direct rather than, if they're being evaluated or their performance reviews are actually run by an AI that has an impact on their career and livelihood. But one interesting point here actually ties back into that DCIT study as well, because there was a big focus on accessibility and obviously removing biases from the process. But with this report, it says employees with disabilities and those who identify as transgender and non-binary report to being more open to use AI because they think that human-centered activities like appraisals and interviews are, I guess, more biased if a human runs it. So yeah, it was interesting to see the parallels in both of the articles as well.
Do you know what? That was the most interesting insight for me. And it reminded me of that Swedish product. I don't know if you've ever aware of it. Tengai. Have you heard of this?
I think you spoke about it last time we were here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a robot head that interviewed people.
Yeah.
An animatronic robot head, and it was lambasted for that. They've got rid of it, which is a terrible shame. But their early research found that there was a certain population that actually preferred to be interviewed by the robot head. And it was the underrepresented communities, it was marginalized communities, people who basically felt they'd be discriminated against by another human being. So these are obviously people that have already had discrimination, prefer to be interviewed by a robot. So I think there's something to be said about that. It's not always the case that a human is the best, particularly if you're dealing with people that have already had difficult issues. And as I say, marginalized communities, they're not like how the system imagines the default to be. Okay, maybe automation or an AI is better there. Okay, give us one more, Christine, before we bring our wonderful guests on.
Yeah, this was a weird one. You put the BlackRock CEO's investor letter. So I was trying to understand. I mean, it's so long. But I actually, in my previous life, I actually worked at State Street, which is like the third biggest asset manager. So that was actually a really interesting read for me. But I was trying to liken it to like the world of talent and people. What is he trying to say here? It's like such a long. It's really, really long, by the way. Any one of you interested in financials and ETFs and whatnot, really good read. But I thought the key point that was interesting here is like the global trends and demographic shifts. So he talks about like the aging population. He talks about like Japan, I think, and emphasizing the need to like prioritize like robust like retirement strategies. How do you support people so they can have a retirement fund by the end of it? So yeah, it's just adapting retirement plans and practices to benefit like longer life expectancies, right? Yeah, so I think that was such a long read, but just trying to liken it, like how is this relevant? So yes, aging population, and I think talent attraction as well, right? Like financial education is so important. So when I was at the FT, it was starting to look into how do we educate the next generation on pension and retirement, where's your money going? So yeah, overall really, really interesting read.
It is, and you picked up exactly the two elements that feed back into recruiting. So number one, it may all be demographics, right? So basically, who is it? I forget his name, but he's a previous guest on Brainfood. But he said, look, all recruitment challenges are a matter of demographics at the end of the day. And I thought maybe he's correct here. So anyway, we know we're living longer, we're also aging, and we're not reproducing. Therefore, that's going to change the shape of the amount of people that are available to do the work. And it's very interesting, by the way, folks, where we've got a recruitment crisis is typically in the frontline sort of jobs, nurses, construction workers, et cetera, and guess what? They're the physically able jobs, right? Yeah. That is the 20 to 40 type of age range. That's the demographic that is basically, we're going to get it older. So the average age is going to just go up beyond that. And therefore, we're not going to have the labor. Japan, you mentioned very interestingly, they just announced they're going to do like 800,000 new immigrants this year, which is crazy for Japan.
I guess, are they looking at specific countries or?
I have no idea what their policy is, but they've been increasing their immigration year by year, but this is like a times 10x increase.
It'll be so interesting to see. Like literally one of our team just came back from Osaka and he said the culture is so different. Like for someone from a Western country to go work in Japan, it's just culturally such a different way of working. So it'll be interesting to see how that shift.
Yeah, I had a chat with a friend of mine who worked in Japan, and we were talking about ATSs, Japanese ATSs.
Wait, what's it like? Like, do they have their own specific? Yeah.
He said it was like completely different, and also not only completely different, but they wanted everything on the same. They hated pagination, apparently.
I can imagine. Like the UX on Japanese websites are also really complex.
It's massively information dense. So according to him, all ATSs are generally single-page apps because they don't want to have pagination. They don't want to browse through. They want to see everything in one thing, and it's obviously crazy talk because it's like the Matrix. It's a completely different culture. How they're going to do it, who the heck knows?
But I bet the LTV cycle is really long though. Like people, I feel like never leave their companies. People stay there for 30 years. So same would be for like when you sign up to a product, they'll probably stay.
We should do a how to hire in Japan, but
for a really long time. I don't know. I'm just
the labor the turnover is low, but also the renege rate apparently is very high. So in other words, people don't accept offers even though they're offered, and they've invested loads of time. And apparently that's got to do with their wife. It's because basically there's a spousal veto at the end of the day, and if you don't involve the wife in the flow, so if you don't think about basically branding to the wife, you ain't going to get the clothes. So this is what, again, people who've worked in Japan have told me. Like the geezer basically couldn't work out why his offer to convert rate was like significantly low. 50% was basically he was getting offered to accept. Where everywhere else is basically 90% you're going to accept, right? 95%. And yeah, he said basically we didn't sufficiently understand that the person who'd make the big decision we weren't even speaking to. So he started basically making sure wife was there first meeting, and you know, all this type of stuff.
Invite them to the offices, like see that, come and have coffee, like
all that stuff. So anyway, we're going to do that show. We'll do that show. Anyway, cool. Let's bring on our guests because we're going to be talking about global TA restructure. Before we bring on Jenny and Martin, by the way, folks, whilst you're watching this, do give the poll a vote. Let's see where we're at on this. There's a poll on the right hand side. Where are you with global restructure? Are you doing it? Yes, no. Put your vote on it here. Christine, you got any experience of this or not? I mean, any type of restructure? I mean, what's the sort of experience you have on
Touch
this?
wood, no, not yet. I guess I've always worked in some small teams. Maybe at the FT, when I was part of the team when we were going through COVID and we had to figure out, who was going on furlough and who wasn't. But otherwise, nothing as complex as some of our guests here today. So looking forward to learning more as well.
Yeah, this is going to be good. I saw Martin give a talk on this a month or so ago, and I thought, we have to speak to him about it. And we've got Jenny here as well, who's also got this type of experience. These are, senior leaders, really. So essentially, they're going to give us a lot of intel. There he is, Martin. Wonderful to see you.
Hey there.
How are you doing?
Okay?
We can hear you well, although it's a bit echoey, but I think we're going to be all right. Martin, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Certainly. And thanks for asking me to join. I am the head of TA strategy and advisory at Philips. That means I look after everything that isn't a recruiter in TA terms. So I have our talent intelligence, recruitment marketing, TA operations, and our total workforce team. And I also running that strategy. I ran a big transformation to the Philips TA a couple of years ago, so I'm going to talk a little bit about today.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And we have Jenny Cunningham there, who obviously has a lovely atrium, a lovely background, and the sun shining. Spring is here. I'm very happy. Jenny, wonderful to see you. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do? Oh, Jenny, you're on mute, I'm afraid. I think you were back. Let me just unmute you. I've requested control of your mic and I've unmuted you, I think.
It still says muted from my side.
Yeah. Sorry, Jenny, can you give it a go?
Is that better?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
There we go. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm Jen. I lead the global talent acquisition at Pearson. Been in TA for probably more years.
Cool. Great to have you, Jen. I think the sound is kind of moving in and out strangely. So it might be that the mic is a bit strange. But we're gonna crack on as best we can. But folks, listen, we've got obviously two people that are very highly experienced, working for very large organizations with global footprint. And today's topic is how do you pull off, in fact, a successful global TA restructure? We're in an era where obviously I think a lot of big companies, but every company is probably going through some sort of restructure in this global search for efficiency. Everyone's trying to do more with less. That affects TA as well. So what is the opportunity and how do we go forward? Let me start with this. How does a reorg sort of actually happen? Is this generated from within the department to say, actually, we're going to do it? Or does someone actually flick it over to you, CEO, say, listen, we need to make these efficiencies, get on with it? Like, how does the project emerge? Let's go to you firstly on this, Martin. In your case, what happened with Philips? Was it from inside out or outside in? Oh, Martin, I think you've actually got muted as well, having put the headphones on. Try again. No. Sorry, Martin, we can't hear you, I'm afraid, friend. Whilst we fiddle with that, why don't we switch it to Jen in terms of the same question, like global TA, like how does it happen?
I think it's both, depending on the organisation. So the org that we've just completed here at Pearson was driven by us, by the HR and the TA department. Historically, and when I say historically, I mean really the last 3 or 4 years, the TA team or function at Pearson had been pretty much unloved, should I say. Been through a number of rounds of leadership, a number of rounds of redundancies, and just really weren't solving the business's problems and challenges. So when I joined just over 12 months ago, it was a pretty clear start point for me to really look at the organisation, the ambition of the organisation, and how we were really set up to solve the business problems through talent. So in this instance, it was directed by me and obviously my CHRO, but obviously in full alignment with our key stakeholders, given that they had clear frustrations with the way that the talent acquisition function had been managed through the past.
Yeah. So in terms of this, like, what was the first kind of the first part of that project? Was it? I guess it must have been soliciting that information and getting that feedback.
Yeah, 100%. And whenever I do big projects like this, I would never start without a considerable piece of discovery work to start with. So that's everything from, again, what the organization's ambition is. Is that changing? Are we changing directions? Are we changing footprint? Are we moving into new locations? Are we thinking about mergers or acquisitions? So kind of all of that future-facing data coming in. What's the aspiration for the organization? Combined with, the current challenges, current problems, history, data, time to fill, number of hires, any trends that we can see kind of coming out of things that we've done in the past, and then kind of layering all of that together. So typically I would spend, again, depending on the organization, because everyone's different, but at least 3 months in that true discovery piece of work to really understand the problem that we're looking to solve, because any org design will fail if it doesn't meet the need of the business.
Yeah, so that's very clear, and this is what we're talking about: size and scale, folks. It's not something you just like drop in a framework or drop in an idea and say this is how it is. We're talking about something that would affect hundreds of thousands of people potentially globally. So and it takes a period of time to make sure you get all of those touch points, not only to gather the information, I guess, but also to make sure other people feel as if they've heard as well. So there's two things you got to do there. It's not only absorbing the intel, but if there's a problematic stakeholder, you've got to make sure that they feel as if their needs are addressed.
100%. And I would say, data. Listen, I'm a big data geek, and it drives my teams mental on some occasions. But equally, whilst data is always a good evidence point, most of us can leverage data to tell any story that we want it to tell if told properly. And so one of the important pieces for me was really socializing and validating what I was seeing and hearing through the data across every single level of the organization, including my own team, as well as key stakeholders, internal, external partners that we work with, etc., to really make sure that the data was evidencing whatever hypotheses I had come up with or whatever problem I was trying to solve in the future.
Yeah, really good. It reminds me actually of that Jeff Bezos sort of clip. I don't know whether anybody saw it, but he was on an interview on a podcast, and he was talking exactly about this. Obviously, Amazon, data-driven business, etc. But he said, look, whenever there's the anecdote and the data don't kind of align, he thinks you've got to look first at the data, because it may be you're measuring the wrong thing, or it may be that you've got the wrong set of measures. And he was telling this story about him being in an office meeting, one of obviously with the leadership team, and one of the leaders said, look, we have a customer service closure rate of 60 seconds. This is what the data tells him. This is the presentation. And he said, look, that doesn't smell right to me. 60 seconds on close, that seems really, really too short. And he said, okay, let's make the call. So he actually was in the room and made the call to customer service. And he was there for 10 minutes. So, so imagine being the departmental head that actually presented. Yeah, we got a 60-second. We got it down to 60 seconds, and then Jeff Bezos comes in, sits there, doesn't say a word. He just rings it for 10 minutes.
Hilarious.
Oh my word! Got to see that clip.
Yeah, but I reckon there's an element there as well of like bringing on people on board with your journey, right, and storytelling. So really resonate, Jenny, what you said, because when I joined the FT, I came from a startup environment. Similarly, I'm like, I know that was a first TA, so I knew what to do. I was like, we just gotta go, go, go. And I think the whole team was like, nope, 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 take your time, speak to all your stakeholders, and exactly that. It took me 3 months, and I was so frustrated. I was like, I know, I need to just get going, jump on the phone. But it is that element of getting buy-in, and so therefore, when you're rolling out, whatever your strategy is, you also get people's buy-in and engagement at that point. Versus, you just rocking up and saying, "Here's the data, here's what I got to do," and everyone's just going, "Who is this person, and why are they just, bamboozling in with their ideas?" So there's the big part of engagement and getting buy-in in that process as well.
100%. Yeah.
Martin, bring you in on this. Hopefully the audio is okay. Can you say something quickly, Martin? Oh, he's still on mute. Sorry, Martin. I'm trying to figure out, maybe unplug the mic there or something.
Technology, we love it and loathe it in equal measures, right?
It's been a really bad day for me when it comes to audio. I've got to say. So it's every scenario has had this situation. I wonder whether there's been an update pushed or something. Martin, are you okay?
How about now?
Yeah, we got you. Cool.
I'm trying to get rid of the echo by going to the.
No worries. It's I think we can hear you great. Martin, as you're going through this discovery period, obviously everyone needs to do this. We need to speak to people, etc. What do you do when you identify someone who you kind of gut feel is going to be a problem child? Like, what do you do there? I mean, do you isolate this individual and just like move on, like kind of hide that person off and just crack through? Or do you kind of double efforts to say, look, we've got to convince this person in some way, otherwise it's going to be a spelk in the paw of the lion, so to say?
I think I'm a little bit with Jenny on that one, and being a bit of a data geek. When we had some people who are potentially blockers, it's to give them the information to show why what we're proposing is going to improve their world, what the issues might be with their current way of working or the current approach. Show them how it's going to be better. It's what Christine said around the storytelling. There's the reason why we're doing this. If I go back and answer your first question, the reason we did our transformation is in TA is that Philips was going through a transformation itself. The whole business was transforming. Philips used to make light bulbs, so we don't do that anymore. We used to make the TV monitor I'm looking at now. We don't do that anymore. Those are all outsourced, off on license to other people. We're a med tech company, medical technology company. Toothbrushes give you a healthy mouth. X-ray machines, MRI machines that you see in the hospitals. And the skill sets we needed for those were different. So if the business was transforming, TA needed to transform from some of the older ways of working, which were very, very siloed. And managers were used to having a single team that always did all of their recruitment and recruited every single role for them. And we shifted to an alignment to the talent, because the talent is the scarcity, and particularly for us, new types of talent, software, digital, cloud type talents. We created vertical teams that focused on that talent, who focused on the candidate first, rather than the business first, because the talent is the scarcity. It's the competition for talent, particularly as we came out of COVID, was so intense. So we had some blockers who were used to doing it the old way. They liked to have their one recruiter who was their recruiter who did everything for them, but that recruiter was not an expert in every single job capability, function, skill, and just couldn't build the talent pools, couldn't nurture the talent that you needed. We showed them that by maybe having to talk to 4 or 5 different recruiters, you were going to get a better job, you get faster time to fill, higher quality, and just show them what the benefits were through that storytelling and that data.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I think a lot of recruiters will be familiar with this. You're either a generalist that does everything, you have a very good customer service, good relationship. I was that style of recruiter back in my agency days, or you're a verticalized type recruiter that focuses on a particular skill set or region or whatever it might be. But that's your core focus. You would work across a broad range of customers, purely delivering that side of work. So it is a big mental shift, I think, for both the customer, because they'll end up being friends with their supplier. You're going to lose a friendship. There's emotional attachments that go outside of business. And there's probably mental shifts for the recruiters as well. I'm sure there's plenty of recruiters that were not happy at suddenly having to, learn to recruit medical device engineers or something like this. So I imagine there was a turnover in the TA team as these moves were being made, Martin. Was that right? Or did you manage to persuade people to kind of change their focus and, verticalize?
So, of course, there was some turnover and some change combined with the shift in the strategy. As always, what you've got to enable that strategy, you've got to pay for that strategy. We moved some of our recruitment offshore. We did a pilot to test whether it would work. And then we set up recruitment teams in what we call nearshore locations. So, and we do that for some of the what we call the enabling functions. So, finance, HR, IT. So not the customer facing perhaps roles where the talent pools are a bit broader, but also where you don't need proximity to the hiring manager. Also, the sourcing might be slightly easier. There's quite a little bit less direct sourcing that you have to do. You can be a little bit more, taking the response that you can get in from job adverts and so on. So we moved some of that offshore and so created new teams. But a lot of the teams that used to do that, we managed to retrain into some of the other areas, and we rebalanced our workforce, took away some of the contingent workforce as well.
So guys, that's a really interesting sort of technique. So you almost are having a look at different skills within the business, like how the difficulty level, let's say, of hiring for those skills. And there might be a large volume of jobs that you always recruit for that perhaps are not that difficult, but potentially that could be put to an offshore team that obviously would provide good cost sort of savings, but also they could maybe non-critical roles or whatever it might be. So that movement, I think, is going to be quite I think that will be an industry-wide movement, to be honest. I think a lot of companies that have a global footprint will be distributing or dispersing their TA teams that way. Jenny, you're nodding your head there. Is this something you guys are doing, or what's your thoughts on how you do the outsourcing? Would you follow a similar model to what Martin was saying, or is there a different way to do it?
It's interesting because when I joined Pearson, we'd actually already done that. So we had actually already outsourced a fairly large chunk of TA offshore to the Philippines. Again, sadly, at that time, I think the underlying principle of it was more around cost control versus delivery. And obviously there needs to be a balance between the two. And so it was offshored, and very quickly the model, I won't say failed, because that would be unfair to those people, but it really didn't deliver exactly what it needed to deliver. And so then as I was going through my thought process on kind of design options for the future of Pearson and my team, it was finding the balance of how do we keep that cost control by offshoring, but also add an additional level of value to the organization. So we actually went through a similar process to Martin, that we do still have that offshore capability, but that offshore capability, again, looks after the higher volume, kind of lower level, more transactional roles. And we actually brought our recruiters back on site, not on site, but closer to the customer in some of our key markets. And we went through, again, a similar process of, we have kind of our core functions, or our corporate enabling functions, as Martin called it, where we can align recruiters more specifically on types of roles and or skill sets versus functional title. And then we have our more niche aligned recruiters more in the kind of tech and engineering space. And for exactly the same reasons as Martin, A, being closer to the customer, B, managing that cost control, and C, really enabling them to get their arms around difficult candidate pools or in-demand candidate pools, drive a different level of experience and engagement with those cohorts. So incredibly similar, I guess, direction, with the only difference being the offshore piece had already when I started.
No, it's very interesting. It'd be interesting to know, folks, whether that's a general pattern. I mean, let us know in the comments if have you had any experience of working with or pushing the function offshore, and if so, how did you make that decision? You know, did you think of them as just entirely the same type of person, just, you know, working at a low cost level, or did you actually have different jobs that they recruited for based on, you know, experience, skill level, and what have you? And in fact, we've got some questions by Debbie. We're going to get to them in a bit about how you measure sort of performance in those places. So yeah, if you got any other questions, do put them in Q&A. We're going to get to them at the end of the show here. Okay. Restructuring is more than just offshoring, though. It's also about job design. It's also about thinking about what our TA teams are doing. How do you go about looking at the activities of the existing structure and think actually we could optimize it by getting, you know, these guys to do that because it's duplicating what these people are doing? Like, what is the audit process in that? Martin, do you want to give this a shot early?
Sure. We started by thinking of where's the value, where's the biggest value we can give, and I've just outlined one example. Sourcing for a software engineer is a lot harder than sourcing for a financial controller. The value we can provide is higher in that software engineering as a TA function. And that led to one of the decisions to offshore some of that finance recruitment. So we think about where do we add that value. Hard to source roles, customer facing roles. Obviously seniority has an aspect. Whether that's operating at an executive level where you want to have a higher level, perhaps a higher level of service that you deliver on the rec, or operating at a campus level where you have to have a higher presence. You've got to be at the schools, at the universities, getting the guest lectureships, sponsoring projects, research, etc. Very different type of service, operating at a very different level, but each providing a different level of value. We also did it by looking at the rec load that we wanted to give to each recruiter. So for those areas where we wanted to provide the highest value, or perhaps were the hardest to source, they get a lower rec load. So, you know, for example, could be 30 recs per year for our executive recruiters. And we do all of our recruitment, so the majority of our recruitment in-house. An enabling function recruiter operating at this, you know, middle range seniority of role might handle 120 recs in a year. So we deliver the value through the requisition load of the recruiters, and recognizing which roles are harder to source, harder to fill, and might take longer and need a more hands-on approach.
What was the framework for determining the hardness of it? Did you do like some sort of scorecard or some sort of color scheme, traffic light? How did you do it, Martin?
Back to Jenny and data. So we looked back at over the 5 years worth of recruitment activity. We are lucky enough to have had Workday for that long. Everybody Workday understands what I mean. But it does give us consistent data, so we can go back and look at the number of candidates you need on a rec, different grade, different location, different job functions, and we could do some really detailed analysis. How do we source? We track the source of every hire. We track their performance for 2 years through our performance management system. We then know which channels give us the highest quality of hire, and which direct sourcing, referrals, and internal are always our top 3. So direct sourcing and referral is what we use most for software engineering type roles. You know, the really hard to fill roles. So it's bringing in the source and the quality of the channel, and how you source the candidate was another element. And then that rec load thing. If you're dealing with high volumes of the same job, you can handle way more than if you've got 20 different, 60 different.
Yeah, linking onto that. So with the rec load, is this something that you communicate across the team? So I'm intrigued, like, how do you bring the team together? If some recruiters might be like, why am I working on 130 a year versus that person over there at 30? So how do you ensure like alignment and fair and quality in the team? Is this something that you communicate quite often? Like,
that's a really good question. We had been organised in regions. We were the only part of Philips that was organised in regions. And that was because we had been part of our shared service function, HR shared service function. And there you need to have the local regional capability because of the time zones and the language. We're now structured globally. So all of our teams are global because all of our businesses are global. And so we're aligning with the business more. And we're structured around those job functions. So that means that we can get together. The teams are made of recruiters who recruit for similar roles, similar activities. Often it's for the same manager because finance managers hire finance people. They don't hire software engineers. That's in our R&D function. So often they're also recruiting for the same business and the same hiring manager. So we organize it that way around that vertical of the function that they're recruiting in. So all the people in that team tend to be working on the same rec load. Now, of course, they know that there's a very big difference between what they might be doing in campus and what they might be doing in executive. It's just a very different approach. It's a very different level. It's just as good to have a sports car and a van. I'm not pointing in either direction, but which one's a sports car, which one's a van? They're both very good at what they do, but don't try and move house in a sports car.
It's such a common question, like what should be the average rec load for a recruiter? That pops up all the time, but I think some of the last bit of your monologue there just describes that it needs to be so contextualized as to a difficulty of role. Is it the same role? It's different from hiring. If you're hiring graduates, that are just basically you could probably do 100 of those, no problem. But if you're hiring for a diverse set of hard to fills, then you'd be crazy to give anybody a large number. So it's very much contextualized. And it's also fascinating, Martin, to hear you talk about the consistency of data, even though you're using tough technology. So Jenny, are you also a fan of Workday? Sort of how did you dropped into a Pearson with probably a brief to say we've got to up level the TA team. Were you thankful that there was like some crappy enterprise product everyone hates that has actually been there for a long time? Because people like to swap ATSs into the latest cool thing, but you're going to lose a lot by doing that swap out, simply because the data often doesn't move across in the same way that you thought it might. So how did you deal with the existing technology set, and what data were you able to drag out of that?
So we don't have Workday, and I haven't ever actually used Workday, so I can't comment specifically on the Workday piece. But 2 years prior to myself joining Pearson, we'd actually moved over to Oracle Cloud, which, again, there was a lot, I guess, to be said about the way that the system was built and configured. Thankfully, though, the blessing in disguise was in my prior organization, which was also Med Devices, Martin, so we have a commonality there. I was the lead on building out the Oracle Cloud system there. So it was pretty fortunate that I actually had some background and experience in what I knew good looked like from that system. So Oracle had been in, I think, about 2 years. We had Taleo prior to that, which is obviously also an Oracle product. So we had all of the exports of the data. And thankfully, we have the most phenomenal people analytics team that I will give a big up if any of them are listening. They are the best people in our entire business, in my humble opinion. And those guys really helped me make sense of that data and kind of pull it all together and create some amazing dynamic Tableau dashboards that I can leverage and help me share or tell that story through the org design itself, but on an ongoing basis. One of my big things, and I was kind of nodding along again as Martin was talking there, because we're absolutely cut from the same cloth, and I'm glad to meet somebody else like me in this space, that I am a complete, I can't stand what I call vanity metrics in HR. So, the time to fill or the time to hire or number of recs per recruiter, because as Martin, articulated already, all recs are not created equal, all locations are not created equal. And so how do we as recruiting leaders manage the performance of our organization and of our teams to make sure that we're really challenging and stretching people without overburdening them, particularly when they're constantly being hit from line managers saying, well, what's our time to fill, or what's our average this, or, you know, give me my average that. So for me, I'm constantly pushing back on the organization and asking the question of why, you know, that kind of old agile mentality of why 5 times, what is this data going to tell you, versus everything else that I can bring to the table. So that's typically the way that I think about it. We haven't layered on any additional tech since, because as you started at the top of the hour talking about AI, that's our primary focus at the moment. So we're not spending any more money on, I guess, enterprise-wide systems. We already have everything that we need from that perspective. And our focus really is to look at how do we enable our recruiters to do a better job, and be more productive with the tools that are out there.
Yeah, very, very good. Okay, I just noticed the time we're flying through this, so I'm gonna get to some key points I want to make sure we cover. How do you know there's a part of your function that needs to change, and then how do you know like what that change looks like? So I'm going to reconfigure. This is not performing, so I guess I must have some metrics on that, or I have some sentiment from the business that this thing is not happening. Like, how do you know what is the right solution there? Because we're talking about human beings, we're talking about processes. These are kind of like intangible stuff. So what's your thoughts on that? I'll open up to either Jenny or Martin to have a go on this.
So for me personally, I stay really close to my business and I stay really close to my teams. Like, I make it my business, know exactly what's going on the ground. And so I would hope, although, you know, not always the case, that I would see something becoming a problem before it becomes a problem, if that makes sense. But I think, you know, making sure that you're having QBRs with your leaders, with your team managers, with your recruiters, with any suppliers, really keeping a close eye on what's happening in the market, both in the short and longer term view, really helps mitigate some of those challenges and, you know, either upskill or reskill or redeploy as necessary, in, again, more of an agile fashion to prevent things really becoming a challenge. Because I think once it becomes a challenge, it's so easy in TA, and this is person agnostic. Reputation of TA in any large corporate sinks or swim with the last deal. You know, you can have a really, really efficient function for a really long time, and the second you have that blip, it spreads like wildfire. And so for me, I really always try and mitigate anything before it gets to that point, because pulling it back is too hard.
Yeah. So basically, just go ahead, Martin.
Sorry. I'll follow up with what Jenny said. That's the beauty of TA. Everybody is an expert because everybody has recruited, so they all know how to run our function.
Yeah.
I think to build on what you said, Jenny, you talked about the vanity metric, but there are some standard metrics. One of the questions in the chat just now, and we use some of the same standard metrics that anyone would use. None of the recruitment systems are a sports car at doing dashboards. So they're all the van, but they are a van at capturing the data for you. So we take the data out of, whether it's Oracle or Workday or Taleo or whatever it is, take that data out, use a BI tool to present the dashboard, and you'll get massively better results because it's so visually impactful for the user. So we have a dashboard, take the data into a dashboard, and we can use that. And then we have global consistency in that dashboard. We measure the same things across all of our teams. And then you can identify a problem because one area might be showing different to another area. Take your rec per hire. We measure rec per hire. It's different for every single team. It's the same per function, same per geography, but different for each of those teams. So we know we can spot when the executive team maybe is over-resourced, got too much demand, for example, and overstretched, and we need to give them some more. We also then track some of those strategic objectives as well. So getting close to the business, like as Jenny says. So what is strategically important? For example, gender diversity is really important for us. So we make sure we track and track on the things that are important to the business as well.
And you know what? I know loads of people watching this are saying, you know what, Martin, shows what this dashboard looks like. Because they're desperate for it. But that is going to be another show, folks. That's going to be in the planning for one of the shows in May, because a lot of people do actually need to see a dashboard to understand what a dashboard looks like. And we've had loads of people say, look, I've got to put this one together for the first time. No clue how to do it. And actually, it seems that no one does, like, truly, it seems that no one's typically trained on doing it. And we have kind of cobbled together our experience as we push through. So we're going to do a show where it's talking about recruitment analytics and actually how do you create a dashboard, makes sense to you, and it's also aligned to what the business wants to look at. So make sure you follow the channel if you want to get updated on that. All right, we are flying through this. A question I wanted to make sure we cover: how do you know it's worked? So at some point, in fact, firstly, how do you know when to report whether it's worked or not? Like, when you start the project, is an expectation set by the CHRO or the CEO to say, all right, Martin, you got 6 months? Or is it, or is it up to you to say, okay, listen, we can probably give you an update as we go? Or is there some way you can even do a real-time type of update to say, you know what, here's how we are as of today?
So we have built a dashboard. I'll happily share it on that future episode if it helps. We have 16 KPIs that we track. 14 of them are green, 2 are amber, and most importantly, 12 show a year-on-year improvement. But that's when we went and sowed. This is why we think we're successful. This is why we can talk about the performance of that transformation. So it's just that consistency of the measures and showing the improvement.
Yeah. Do we want to see Martin come back to demonstrate his lovely dashboard, folks? Let me know in the comments. Okay, Jenny, how about you? So how do you actually go back to the reporting side and report whether it's worked or not? And sometimes we've got to be brave enough to say it hasn't worked in certain areas, right? We can't just like BS it through. So how? I guess there's 2 questions there. Number one, how do we? How do you know when to report back? And how do you actually report the bad news? Is there a technique to do that? That doesn't sort of torpedo the project, but sort of gives an honest view.
Well, thankfully, I haven't had to do that, and I'll touch wood that I don't have to do that piece. But like Martin, we do have a dashboard. It is visible for all of our leaders. Again, we do regular QBRs, so we keep on top of our business leaders in terms of our progress. One of the things that I always kind of shout about, and I guess it's more anecdotal, but it's the utopia that I talk to my team about is when we're turning candidates down, which obviously is 90% of the people that we're speaking to, that they're still saying to us, what can I do to get a role at Pearson? Like, what do I need to do more of? So it's slightly intangible, but more and more I'm starting to see those kind of pieces of feedback coming back in from my teams where they've spoken to candidates. We're only just this year starting to look at things like Glassdoor and employer branding and, kind of that piece. So don't judge me on the career site. That is not my doing. It will be solved this year. But I really, really look to the candidate perception of Pearson as my ultimate North Star, because they're the people that we're serving, and really to help us understand how we're creating a meaningful career moment for them and a meaningful experience through that process.
Yeah, very, very good. Go ahead, Martin.
I would say, and if you are surveying your candidates to get an NPS or candidate feedback, make sure you survey your rejected candidates, because they are an enormously important source of information and also potential customers.
Yeah.
It's also very important to understand that. I think Star do this very well. I mean, there's loads of products out there that are fantastic to do collecting candidate feedback, but they basically track sort of things like what is the average score per stage, for instance, or per status, and they do make sure you capture people who have been rejected. Obviously, that's emotionally difficult. They're not going to give you a high number because it's they've had a bad moment. Rejection is a bad experience, per se. It's inevitable. But that number also is relevant, because is it higher or lower over time? Then that tells you whether you're making that type of progress. Okay, folks, we are running out of time. Debbie, you've asked 3 questions I want to get to, but you know what? Those questions are actually going to be answered in future Brainfood episodes. So the AI and recruiting, that's happening. Quality of hire, we're going to do that show. So make sure you tune in. I'm not just trying to make sure you tune in, Debbie. But basically, we're going to deal with those in due course. Final question for Martin and Jenny. If you could give yourself a word of advice, knowing what you know now about global TA restructure, if you could teleport back in time, back to before you started, and you could say, look, Jenny, look, Martin, here's one thing you should really know. What's that piece of advice you'd give to yourself? Jenny, you want to go first?
God, that's a really good question. I would probably say to forgive myself. And I say that because I consider myself to be a pretty high achiever, and my team called me Miss Hurry Up. So I'm like, get it done. And even though I'm talking about giving yourself the space of 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes, that also kills me, because I already have a hypothesis, and every fiber of me is like, I know this is what I need to do, but I need to go through the process because it's the right thing to do. So forgive myself and just take the time, I think would be the thing that I would say.
Very, very good. I think that's good advice for almost everybody, no matter what the level. But I think that's probably very important for anybody launching a big project, because the pressure is actually going to be significant, right? It's unavoidable. Martin, what would you say to yourself if you could teleport back in time? Say,
I would have told myself when I pulled the project team together to include an HR business partner. Makes it more end-to-end, makes it more connected. We went out and did the voice of the customer. We spoke to lots of people. I actually have one in the project team.
Yep. Very, very good. Very, very good advice. Okay, listen, we could listen to you two all the time. Every sort of, you've got so much to share. Thank you so much for the insight you've shared already in this short hour. It's been brilliant listening to you two. We have to let you go though, because the weekend is nearly upon us, and we know no one works after 3 o'clock on Friday anymore. So go and make yourself a cup of tea, enjoy the weekend. Martin Thomas, Jenny Cunningham, thank you so much for joining Brainfood Live.
Thanks for having us. Take care. Happy weekend, folks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, folks, we're nearly there. Thank you for watching. We're going to finish more or less on time. I know we didn't do the LinkedIn sort of swap outs and all the rest of it. And sorry for the people who registered on LinkedIn elsewhere and so on. We'll recover that for next week. But yeah, we will be back next week. We're going to be talking about skills-based hiring, rhetoric or reality, folks. So I'm going to out myself and say I'm a critic of skills-based hiring. Not because, I love credentialism, but I think we've kind of embraced it and completely underestimated the implementation task of moving to skills-based hiring. Like, how do you even do it? How do you track the skills? How do you know those skills are things we're going to need? Isn't there such a thing as skills fade? Like the value of skills are changing so fast. Why are we doing skills-based hiring when, it maybe we'll look for different things in 3 months' time? So I think there's lots of critiques about skills-based hiring. I'm going to be trying to play it neutral, but we've got a bunch of people coming in talking about different angles. So we're going to try and cover it. We've got advocates and detractors. Hopefully we'll have a sensible conversation. Christine is going to be back being co-host, and hopefully you'll be with us as well. So make sure you follow the channel, sign up for the show. It's already there. We'll see you there next week.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Christine. That was really interesting.
That was actually really good. I always feel like every time I'm on here, because I feel like there's always something I need to be doing more, right? And then it's like, how do you can you over-engineer something?
What do you mean?
Right? Well, obviously for me, because I'm also doing a lot of like the people stuff right now, so doing a lot of the annual appraisals, but like in terms of tracking metrics, I am tracking very high level metrics. It would be good to go really granular. So I think every time I come on here, I go back. I'm like, God, there's so much I need to do, but I just need to focus on like what I actually need to deliver on, right? Hiring at the moment.
Aren't the systems helping with the metrics or not? I mean, basically.
Not really. I mean, not the one I'm using at the moment, I'll be honest. But yeah, work in progress. So it's a lot of manual work around it.
It's weird. I mean, I don't collect as many metrics as I should, but it's one of those, once you do get into the habit of collecting them, it becomes less work. Like for instance, things like view rate and stuff like this, I usually don't collect that, but I've started to do it. And actually it's not that hard. It's just a little thing, but yeah, you got to get into the mindset, don't you? So it's not easy. Anyway, cool. What are you doing this weekend? Anything interesting, Christine?
No, I mean, I'm doing my driving theory exam in 2 weeks. So annoyingly, I actually have a Hong Kong license. I just didn't renew it when I moved here, so I got to do it again. So I actually had it before COVID, and because of COVID, I couldn't do the practical in time because you got a 2 year. You have to do your practical within 2 years. So I've got to do my theory again.
Theory is easy though, right? I mean,
I know, I haven't looked at it in a while, so I just it's in 2 weeks, so I'm just trying to clear my weekend.
Accelerate when you see the ducks crossing the road. Make sure you hit every one of those little guys.
You know what? Driving here is so different than Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong we don't have roundabouts, so there's a whole process here, right, on how you indicate when you get out of roundabouts. I'm just actually studying.
I failed my test on the roundabouts, and it was totally outrageous because I don't think it was actually a mistake. But yeah, there we go. Anyway, listen.
Go on, yeah, sorry.
Good luck with the test. Hope you're doing all right. And I will see you next week. So thanks for joining on Brainfood Live. Wonderful to have you. Have a good weekend. Okay.
See ya. Take care. Bye, everyone. Bye.
All right, guys. That's it. Have a good weekend, everybody. I'll see you next week.